Good morning, everyone. Welcome once again to the online Bible study for Crossing Community Church. Today we're going to be talking about Psalm 91. We're going to go through verses 1 through 16 generally, and we're going to be talking about how God is our defense against fear. It's a wonderful psalm. I'm sure many of you know it, probably by heart, but we'll go through it and we'll talk about what our response should be when fear enters our life. Well, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Verse 1 is a statement of fact, and it is a fabulously faith-building one. The psalmist is saying, whoever makes the sheltering protection of the Supreme Most High God his or her home will find themselves securely in the defense of the shade of the infinitely sufficient God. Most High is a magnificent title for God, and it puts all of our challenges into perspective. Every challenge to Him and to those who are in Him is surely most small. They are puny when measured against our God who is most high. This speaks of God's supremacy. His supremacy is the measure of the shelter He can provide. There is no limit to His protection because God is most high above all things that happen on earth. Now, the term Almighty is a translation of the Hebrew title Shaddai, which speaks of the God who supplies all our needs. The point of this repetitive verse is that the writer has found this to be the case. He has found God to be completely dependable. We must not miss the instruction here that those whom God has taken under His care are in a state of the most absolute safety. Verse 4, but as we will note, the experience of God's dependability is conditioned upon casting our dependence upon Him. So in verses 3 through 6, the writer makes an appeal that we must embrace. He issues an invitation to faith. He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. Wow. Well, the writer changes the pronouns from I and my to you. He is making an appeal for his readers to also place their trust in the great God. He does so by highlighting God's providential care for those who trust Him. It would perhaps be a fair conclusion that he had personally experienced such care at the hand of God. Verses 3 and 4 speak of the confidence that those who trust in the Lord can have as they walk through a very dangerous world. Surely He shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. He shall cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. Well, the hunters who seek to ensnare us and the diseases that would destroy us lurk all around us. Yet here we are. The Lord has protected us. He has cared for us, and we have been spared from the snares and protected from the pestilences. In the midst of the onslaught of both predators and pestilence, this man learned by experience that the Lord is faithful to His word, His truth, and therefore he lived as one who was protected as though fully clothed in armor, shield and buckler. And this experience is offered to anyone who will trust the Almighty and Most High God, who is the I am who I am. That's Exodus 3, verse 14. A word of explanation is in order here now. The psalm does not teach that those who trust in the Lord will never suffer adversity. Both Scripture and history reveal otherwise. However, this psalm points us to the reality that, in fact, God constantly protects His children from much that we usually do not even consider. We live in a culture and a world that is filled with evil and evildoers, and yet we are told that we can face those uncertain days with a certainty that we need not fear. Again, the Bible does not teach that the Christian will never experience calamity. Rather, it teaches that we do not need to fear. As we saw previously, our lives and times are in God's hands. We can fearlessly, because faithfully, live fruitful lives in the midst of dangers. Now, there's an old saying in the Middle East, trust in God, but tie your camel tight. While we do not want to be reckless, we can trust what God's faithful word tells us. Trust Him and be fearless. Going along to verses 9 through 13, we read an encouragement to live by. It is a confirmation or affirmation of the author's faith. Because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over you, to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you shall trample underfoot. So in other words, this man's invitation has been heeded. He has gone from exhorting an unbeliever, or perhaps a weak believer, to now encouraging a new or perhaps a stronger believer. And what follows are the kinds of encouragements that we need to meaningfully and carefully give to one another on our mutual pilgrimage. The first result of the decision to embrace the Lord as refuge is constant care. No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling, for He shall give His angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. Verses 10 through 12. Well, as in the previous stanza, those who trust the Lord are promised God's protection from peril and plagues. The promise is not one of prosperity, but of providential care. The promise is that those who trust the Almighty can be assured that He knows every step that they take and will do whatever is necessary to protect them as they walk in His ways. In fact, the implication by the phrase, in all your ways, is that these ways are actually God's ways. Is this perhaps why the evil one did not mention these words when he misquoted the verse? Sometimes the angels will seemingly stand by while we stub our foot against a stone. How else can you explain Job, or Joni Eareckson Tada, or any number of other people whom you may personally know who are Christians undergoing intense trial? Well, the verse does not teach us that, as we walk in the shadow of the Almighty, nothing can happen to us that does not have His loving and all-wise permission. As someone has pointed out, Romans 8:28 promises that everything that happens does so in accordance with God's glory for the good of His people. And then several verses later, we read of nakedness and peril and sword as experiences of God's people. In other words, we were never promised that rose garden, or at least not one without the thorns. We should also note that sometimes we turn away from God's shelter, and when we do, we fall. Yet even here, we find the Lord's providential care at work. God's guardian angels may be both celestial and terrestrial. The former are supernatural creatures that God has mandated to be ministers to those who are heirs of salvation. That's Hebrews 1, verse 14. God commands them to care for us. Well, consider the situation with Elisha and the Syrian army. It's found in 2 Kings 6. The Lord had an innumerable host, His angels surrounding the enemy. Or consider God sending His angels to let Peter out of prison. Acts 12. He sent an angel to encourage John while he was exiled on Patmos. Revelation 1. But perhaps the most significant example are the angels that assisted Jesus shortly after He refused to fall for the misapplication of this very verse. The Bible says that after Jesus succeeded in overcoming the devil's temptations, angels came and ministered to Him. It's found in Matthew 4, verse 11. Jesus refused to turn the stones into bread, and the angels supplied bread because of this. They did, in fact, bear Him up. That would not only be the only time. Though this is not the author's point, I want to make a brief application that the Lord sometimes sends human angels to keep us in the path of blessing, or to get us there. The 7 angels of the 7 churches in Revelation 2 and 3 were likely the pastor-teachers of those churches. Sometimes God uses human messengers to encourage us. Be grateful that the Lord sends messengers to keep you in the way, lest you dash your foot against a stone. Further, Turn away from those devilish temptations that will deafen you to such messengers. The second major result of hiding under the shadow of the Almighty is certain conquest. By this I mean confident living in the face of conflict. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you shall trample underfoot. Again, that's verse 13. Well, finally, the author gives a promise to believe, and it is the promise of salvation by faith. Because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. Verses 14 through 16. God describes himself as a place of safety. Because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. The Lord's promises in these verses are because he has known my name. And to know is not merely an intellectual acknowledgement, but includes an intimate awareness. The name of God represents his character. The reason we find refuge in the Lord is because the knowledge of his character assures us that we are safe with him. And this leads to a growing love for the Lord. To know him is to love him. And to love him is to trust him. God will not be used by us. He will be adored by us. If you are disappointed with God, then perhaps you should ask whether he is disappointed with you. Are you simply offering to him a utilitarian lip service of trust, or are you longingly running to his name? The psalm ends with the promise that those who have the Lord as their refuge can be assured of safety, satisfaction, and salvation. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. Verses 15 through 16. Those who love the Lord belong to the Lord. That's why we love him, and they love him, and he will provide a way of escape. Again, God does not promise a trouble-free life. However, he does promise that we can live as overcomers. Now, there are plenty of things to fear in this fallen world. Some of them will paralyze us in our walk with God if we don't learn to rest in him. When fear strikes, remember, we can rest in God's power and protection. God bless you today. Thank you so much for being here and listening to this message and study. I pray that you will continue to be lifted up out of fear because God's power and protection are shadowing you this very day. Thanks again. We look forward to seeing you again next week.